Okay, everyone, so for tonight's story, I have something a little different. Usually, I piece together stories from articles, from secondhand accounts, from police reports. But this one comes from the source. A few years ago, a digital camcorder and a leather-bound journal were found on a bench at a ranger station deep in the Appalachian Mountains. They belonged to a 22-year-old film student from NYU named Alex Miller. He was officially declared a missing person, presumed to have met with an accident on the trail. But the footage he left behind, it doesn't feel like an accident. The files were released to his family, and they, in turn, gave me permission to share them, hoping someone out there might recognize something, anything. What you are about to hear is my description of that first video file, timestamped at 7:14 a.m. on September 28th. The file is labeled Project Silence _Day 1 Take 1. It's raw, unedited, and for the first few seconds, it's just the shaky image of Alex's hiking boots on a bed of fallen leaves. The camera jolts upwards, and then we see him. Alex. He's got one of those faces that's all energy, a shock of unruly brown hair always falling into his eyes, which he keeps pushing back with an impatient hand. He's wearing a fleece, a bright orange that stands out against the green and brown of the woods. He flashes a grin at the lens, a genuine, unforced grin that makes you like him instantly. Okay, test 1, 2. Is this thing on? Of course it's on, you idiot, he says to himself, his breath pluming in the crisp morning air. He fiddles with a setting, and the focus sharpens. Behind him, the Appalachian Trail unfurls, a narrow dirt path winding through a cathedral of ancient trees. The autumn sun is just starting to pierce through the canopy, sending down these golden, almost holy shafts of light. What's up, everyone, he begins, shifting into his, on-camera, persona. It's a little rehearsed, but still charming. My name is Alex Miller, and this is day 1 of Project Finding Silence. For my senior thesis in documentary filmmaking, I decided to do something a little different. No talking heads in a studio, no gritty urban exploration. I wanted to find out what happens when you strip everything away. The noise, the people, the deadlines, the endless scrolling. What's left of a person when all they have is their own 2 feet in the world as it was meant to be? He gestures expansively with his free hand, nearly dropping the camera. He laughs, a short, happy bark. The plan is simple. I'm hiking a 200-mile section of the Appalachian Trail. A little over 3 weeks of just me, my gear, and this camera. I want to capture the silence. Not just the absence of sound, but that feeling. You know, that deep, internal quiet that people say they find out here. Is it real, or is it just a story we tell ourselves? Let's find out. He turns the camera around, holding it out to show the view. The shot is beautiful. The colors are so vibrant it's almost unreal. The fiery reds and electric yellows of the maple and oak leaves against a brilliant blue sky. The microphone picks up the sound of a gentle breeze rustling the canopy, the distant call of a blue jay, the soft crunch of his own footsteps. It's peaceful. It's the kind of footage you see in a travel promotion. Pure, unadulterated, American wilderness. Looking at it, you feel a sense of calm, a sense of hope. You feel like maybe he's right, maybe you really can find something profound out there. The next few clips are a montage, a time lapse of clouds scudding across a mountain peak, a close-up of a vibrant red salamander making its slow journey across a mossy log. Alex fording a shallow, crystal-clear stream, laughing as the cold water soaks the cuffs of his pants. It all serves to build this atmosphere of serene, solitary adventure. Then, a new file begins. The camera is propped on a rock, pointing up the trail. Alex is sitting beside it, munching on a protein bar. A woman, probably in her late 20s, comes striding into the frame. She's lean and tanned, carrying a minimalist pack, moving with an easy, practiced gait. Morning, she says, nodding at Alex without breaking stride. Hey, hold up a second, Alex calls out, scrambling to his feet. You're a thru hiker, right? Headed for Katahdin? She stops, turning. She has a friendly, open face. Decided to flip-flop, doing the last leg south now. Call me Jenna. Alex, I'm a film student, he explains, gesturing to the camera. Making a documentary about this. The trail. Mind if I ask you a couple of questions? Jenna shrugs, leaning against her trekking poles. Shoot, what are you looking for out here? Alex asks, his voice earnest. Jenna smirks a little. Honestly, a shower, a real bed, a burger the size of my head. She laughs, and Alex joins in. No, but for real. I don't know. I started this whole thing because I got laid off and had nothing better to do. I thought it would be this big, spiritual journey. Some days it is. Most days it's just walking and trying to figure out where the hell you're going to poop. Her bluntness is refreshing. You can see Alex relax, his interviewer posture softening. So it's not some big spiritual awakening, he presses. Sometimes, Jenna says, her expression turning more thoughtful. Sometimes when you're up on a ridge at sunrise and there's nobody for miles, and the whole world is just quiet. Yeah, you feel it then. You feel small, but in a good way. Like you're a part of something huge. But then an hour later you're swatting mosquitoes and cursing a blister on your heel. It comes and goes. The peace, I mean. You can't force it. You just have to be there when it shows up. She glances at the sky. Gotta keep moving if I want to make Hawk Mountain shelter by dark. Good luck with your project, Alex. You too, Jenna. Take it easy. She gives a little wave and continues down the trail, a small, competent figure quickly swallowed by the immense forest. The camera stays on the empty path for a moment before Alex picks it up. Later that same day, he has another encounter. This time, it's an older couple, probably in their 60s, looking rosy-cheeked and fit. They introduce themselves as Mark and Susan. The interview is just as friendly, just as normal. They talk about hiking sections of the trail every year for their anniversary. They offer Alex a handful of trail mix. The best advice I can give you, son, Mark says, his hand resting on his wife's shoulder, is to listen. The trail talks to you. Not in words, of course. But you learn its language. The way the wind sounds before a storm. The snap of a twig that tells you a deer is nearby. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. They wish him well. They tell him to be safe. It's all so wholesome, so utterly unremarkable. These were normal people, having a normal, positive experience on the trail. And it seems Alex is, too. The next section of footage is different. The video shows a slow-motion pan across a valley shrouded in evening mist. The sun is setting, painting the clouds in shades of pink and orange. But we don't hear the natural sounds. Instead, we hear Alex's voice, a clear voiceover, obviously recorded later. He's reading from his journal. Day 1, his voice begins, filled with a quiet satisfaction. 17 miles. My legs feel like jelly, my shoulders are already aching from the pack, and I have never felt better in my entire life. I knew this was a good idea. Back in New York, silence is a commodity. You have to buy it with noise-canceling headphones or expensive apartments on high floors. Out here, it's the default setting. It's heavy. It's a presence, not an absence. It presses in on you. Jenna was right. You feel small, but not insignificant. It feels like a homecoming. I think I've spent my whole life talking, and I'm only just now learning how to listen. His words hang over the beautiful, silent visuals. It's poignant. It's exactly the kind of emotional, reflective moment he was hoping to capture for his film. He was succeeding. The project was working. The final file from that first day is a single, unbroken shot. The timestamp reads 7:38 p.m. The camera is on a small, portable tripod, placed a few feet away from a crackling campfire. In the warm circle of light, we see Alex. He's in his small, one-man tent, the flap open. He's sitting cross-legged, the leather-bound journal open on his lap, a headlamp providing a focused beam as he writes. He looks content, exhausted but fulfilled. The only sounds are the pop and hiss of the fire and the chirping of crickets. It's the perfect closing shot for the day. A man alone, at peace in the wilderness. He writes for about 10 minutes. Then, with a yawn, he closes the journal, places it carefully into a waterproof bag, and zips up the tent flap. The camera keeps rolling. For a long time, the screen is filled with nothing but the dancing flames of the campfire. The fire slowly dies down, the bright oranges and yellows turning to glowing red embers. The chorus of crickets grows louder, a constant, hypnotic thrum. The darkness beyond the firelight seems absolute. You start to get lulled by it. You can almost feel the night air, smell the wood smoke. It feels like the video is about to end. And then, it happens. It's a sound, clear as a bell on the sensitive camera microphone. It's distinct from the gentle, organic sounds of the forest. It's the sharp, percussive crack of a heavy stick breaking underfoot. And it's close. Very close. Just outside the ring of dying firelight. Inside the tent, the fabric rustles. A silhouette shifts. Alex, woken by the sound. He's still for a moment, listening. The crickets seem to go silent, all at once. The forest holds its breath. After a long, tense 10 seconds, the silhouette in the tent settles back down. Alex must have dismissed it. A deer, a raccoon, a branch falling, he goes back to sleep. But the camera and the person watching, we know better. That wasn't an animal, it was the sound of weight. Deliberate, the sound of someone standing where they shouldn't be. The screen stays fixed on the glowing embers. The silence stretches on, now heavy and menacing. 1 minute passes. 2. Nothing but the whisper of the wind. Then, without any warning, the screen blinks to black. The recording stops. The file ends. The next file picks up hours later, the timestamp reading 6:48 a.m. on day 2. The darkness from the previous clip is gone, replaced by the pale, washed-out light of dawn filtering through the thin nylon of the tent. The camera is inside with Alex, evidently propped against his pack. We can hear him stirring, the rustle of his sleeping bag, a deep groan. He unzips the tent flap just a crack, and the lens is filled with the sight of misty woods, the air so cold it seems to shimmer. "Morning, world," he mumbles, his voice thick with sleep. He sounds fine, completely fine. He yawns, stretches, and makes a satisfied sound. Slept like a rock. Must be the country air. As the narrator of this story, watching this footage for what must be the 10th time, this is the first part that truly chills me. He heard the snap of the twig last night. We all saw him stir. But in the light of day, his rational mind has completely erased it. It was a deer. It was a branch. It was nothing. He's back to being Alex, the optimistic film student on an adventure. He has no idea how close that nothing was, or that it was the sound of his brief, fragile peace being irrevocably broken. He goes about his morning routine with practiced efficiency. Boiling water for instant coffee, chewing on a dry granola bar, breaking down his tent. He talks to the camera intermittently, his commentary cheerful and focused on the day ahead. Alright, so the plan today is to push about 18 miles to the next major shelter, a place called Black Rock Knoll. Supposed to be a good spot to refill on water and maybe, if I'm lucky, run into another human being for a bit. Solitude is great and all, but even Thoreau had visitors, right? He gives a small laugh. It's a little forced. The next sequence of clips shows him hiking. The sun burns through the mist, and the forest returns to that picture postcard beauty from the first day. But something has changed for the viewer. I can't see the trees anymore without searching the shadows between them. Every gust of wind in the microphone makes me tense up. Alex, however, seems to have shaken off whatever unease he might have felt. He films a woodpecker, comments on an interesting mushroom formation. He's performing for his project, trying to recapture the magic of day one. Around midday, he reaches the shelter. The video file is labeled black_rock_knoll_rest_stop. It's a simple 3-walled lean-to, a common sight on the trail, with a stone fire pit in front of it. There are a couple of other day hikers there, a young couple in brightly colored technical gear, refilling their water bottles from a spigot fed by a spring. Alex gives them a nod. Everything feels normal again, safe. He sets his camera on a flat rock, framing the shelter and the trail ahead. He's off to the side, filtering his own water, when the man walks into the frame. He doesn't arrive like the other hikers, striding with purpose. He just appears, drifting out from the trees at the edge of the clearing. You can tell immediately that he doesn't belong. While everyone else is in Gore-Tex and fleece, he's wearing a pair of dark, grease-stained work pants, the kind a mechanic might wear, and a faded flannel shirt that's too thin for the mountain air. His shoes are old, cracked leather work boots, not hiking boots. He carries no pack, no water bottle, no gear of any kind. He's old, maybe late 60s, but rail thin, with a gaunt, hollowed-out look to his face. His skin is like tanned leather stretched tight over his skull. He moves to an empty spot on the edge of the shelter's wooden platform and just sits down, his back against a post. And he stares. The camera, by sheer chance, is positioned so we can see both Alex and the man. Alex, busy with his water filter, doesn't notice him for a full minute. The young couple packs up their things, gives the man a wide berth, and heads down the trail without a word. Now it's just Alex and him. Finally, Alex looks up, ready to pack his own things, and he sees the man. He freezes for a split second. Then, his natural, friendly demeanor kicks in. "Morning," Alex says, offering a small, hesitant wave. "Great day for it." The man doesn't reply. He doesn't nod. He doesn't blink. He just stares at Alex. His eyes are the most unsettling part. They're pale, a watery blue-gray, and they seem completely vacant. There's no light in them, no focus. It's like looking at the eyes of a taxidermied animal. Alex is clearly uncomfortable. He clears his throat, fumbling with his water bottle. You hiking through? Or just taking a break? He tries again, his voice a little strained. The silence that follows is excruciating. It stretches on for what feels like an eternity on the tape. The only sound is the chirping of a bird somewhere in the canopy. The man's gaze is fixed, unmoving, on Alex. It's not an angry look, or a curious one. It's utterly empty, and that's 1,000 times worse. It's the look of someone who doesn't see a person, but an object. Alex finally gives up. He forces a tight, awkward smile. Okay, well, you take it easy, he mutters, turning to grab his pack. He's clearly decided to just get out of there, but as he shoulders his pack, the man speaks. His voice is a low, gravelly rasp, like stones grinding together. It's barely above a whisper, but the camera's microphone picks it up perfectly. This forest, he rasps, without any inflection at all. It chooses who to talk to. Alex stops. He turns back slowly. I'm sorry, what was that? The man doesn't repeat himself. He just continues his dead-eyed stare. The moment is broken. Alex shakes his head, as if to clear it, turns, and walks quickly out of the frame, heading down the trail. He doesn't look back. The camera keeps rolling for another 30 seconds, the shot fixed on the man sitting silently in the shelter, a strange, still figure against the backdrop of the vibrant, living woods. Then the file ends. The next file is Alex's video diary from that night. The timestamp is 8:12 p.m. He's in his tent again, the familiar glow of his headlamp illuminating his face. But his expression is different. The easy confidence is gone, replaced by a tense, worried line between his brows. He's trying to sound casual, but his voice is tight. Okay, so, end of day 2, he starts, looking just past the lens. Made good time. Legs are sore. The usual. Had a weird encounter today at the Black Rock Knoll shelter. He lets out a short, hollow laugh. Met this guy. Super creepy. Just this old, skinny dude who looked like he hadn't seen a shower in a decade. He just sat there, staring at me. Didn't say a word until I was leaving, and then he mumbled some weird, cryptic crap. Something about the forest choosing who to talk to. He runs a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture we haven't seen before. I don't know, just gave me a really bad vibe. But hey, it's the Appalachian Trail, right? You get all sorts out here. Probably just some local eccentric or a guy who's been in the woods a little too long and lost a few marbles. He's trying to rationalize it. He's trying to convince himself, more than his future audience. He's framing it as an anecdote, a quirky character for his documentary. But his eyes keep darting towards the zipped-up flap of his tent, towards the oppressive darkness outside. Anyway, he says, his voice suddenly louder, more forced. Onward and upward, another 17 miles tomorrow. Project Silence is still a go. He reaches out and shuts the camera off. It's the final file of the day that seals the dread. It's the morning of day 3, 7:03 a.m. The camera is on the ground again, pointing up at Alex as he efficiently packs his sleeping bag and tidies his campsite. He seems to have resolved to put the creepy encounter behind him. He's humming a little, moving with purpose. He rolls up his sleeping pad, straps it to the bottom of his pack. Everything is almost ready. He turns, reaches for his large backpack propped against a tree. He hefts it, preparing to swing it onto his shoulders. And then he stops. Dead still. His whole body goes rigid. The humming ceases. The camera, still running on the ground, captures his profile. His eyes are wide, fixed on the top of his pack. He just stands there for a long, silent moment. Then, ever the filmmaker, he slowly lowers the heavy pack to the ground, his movements stiff and deliberate. He crouches down, bringing what he's seen into the camera's view. He repositions the camera, his hands trembling slightly, and zooms in. Resting perfectly centered on the top flap of his backpack is a small, humanoid figure. It's maybe 5 inches long, crudely fashioned from twisted twigs. 2 thin sticks for the legs, a thicker one for the torso, 2 more for arms splayed out to the sides. Its head is a small knot of what looks like dried grass or pine needles. The entire thing is bound together with rough, dark twine, wrapped tightly around its joints and its neck. It's not something that could have been formed by the wind. It's not something that could have fallen from a tree. It was made. It was placed. It's a doll, a fetish, a deliberate, silent message left for him while he slept. The camera stays on the object, the focus tack sharp. We see every detail of the rough bark, every fiber of the grimy twine. Alex's hand enters the frame, hovering over the figure for a second before he snatches it up. He holds it between his thumb and forefinger, right in front of the lens. His breathing is now audible, sharp and uneven. He's not trying to explain it away now. This isn't a random encounter. This is something else. He drops the stick figure as if it's burned him. Then he does something that makes the hair on my arms stand up. He grabs the camera, his face a mask of dawning horror, and he slowly, shakily, pans a full 360 degrees. The lens sweeps across the dense, silent trees surrounding his small campsite. The beautiful, sun-dappled woods from yesterday are gone. Now, every tree is a potential hiding place. Every shadow seems to deepen and stretch. The forest is no longer a sanctuary. It's a witness. It's an accomplice. The camera comes to a stop, pointing back at his own pale, terrified face. He leans in close to the microphone, his voice a choked, desperate whisper that barely registers. Is someone there? The video file that follows Alex's whispered question is labeled simply, day_3_move. It's not a diary entry. It's raw feed. The clip starts abruptly, already in motion. The forest is a blur of green and brown, whipping past the lens as Alex moves at a pace somewhere between a brisk walk and a frantic jog. The audio is dominated by the heavy, percussive sound of his breathing, deep and ragged, and the rhythmic crunch of his boots on the leaf-littered trail. He's not performing anymore. He's not the student filmmaker. He's prey. Watching it, you can feel the shift in his entire being. He no longer walks with the easy confidence of a long-distance hiker. His steps are shorter, faster, his shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow from behind. Every few seconds, he stops dead, and the camera jerks around in a wild, sickening arc as he scans the trail behind him. He sees nothing, we see nothing, but the absolute conviction in his movements tells us he feels something. The forest, his intended sanctuary, has become a cage, and he can feel the bars closing in. This goes on for what the timestamps show as nearly 2 hours. A series of short, choppy clips. Alex pushing himself harder, his breathing growing more labored. He doesn't speak. The silence is more telling than any monologue could be. It's the silence of a man who is listening. Listening with every fiber of his being for a sound that shouldn't be there. The snap of a twig that isn't his own. The rustle of leaves just out of sync with the wind. Then, in a file marked, day_3_ridge_sighting, he stops at a vantage point, a small clearing overlooking a vast, rolling valley. The autumn colors are breathtaking, but Alex isn't looking at the scenery. He raises the camera, his hands visibly shaking, and a whirring sound fills the audio as he engages the digital zoom. The image becomes a mess of pixels, unsteady and unfocused. He's aiming at a distant ridge, maybe a half-mile away. I've re-watched this part dozens of times, trying to see what he saw. For a second, the focus sharpens just enough. Against the yellow and orange tapestry of the trees on the opposite slope, there is a shape. A thin, vertical smudge of black. It's utterly still. It could be a dead tree trunk. It could be a shadow. But as Alex frantically tries to fine-tune the zoom, struggling to get a clearer picture, the smudge moves. It's just a slight shift, a turn to the side, but it's undeniably deliberate. It's a person, standing there, watching him. Alex lets out a choked gasp, a sound that's swallowed by the wind. He fumbles with the focus ring on the lens. The image blurs, then snaps back into clarity. The figure is gone. He pans the camera wildly back and forth across the ridge, zooming in and out. There's nothing, just trees and rocks. It's as if it was never there. But we saw it. I saw it. And Alex saw it. The footage continues for another minute, the camera still trained on the empty ridge, Alex's ragged breathing the only sound. He's not trying to rationalize it as a trick of the light. He knows what he saw. The man from the shelter. He's being followed, hunted. The next file is a video diary from later that day, though the sun is still high. He's not in his tent. He's just sitting on a log, the camera propped on his knee, pointing up at his own face. He looks terrible. His eyes are sunken and bloodshot, dark circles smudged beneath them like bruises. He hasn't slept. His face is pale under a sheen of sweat and grime. He's following me, Alex says, his voice a low, trembling rasp. There's no attempt at bravado now, no forced cheerfulness for his project. This is a raw confession. The old man from the shelter. I saw him, on the ridge. He was just standing there. watching me. He scrubs a hand over his face, his movements jerky and agitated. I don't understand what he wants. He has no gear, no pack. How is he moving so fast? How did he get ahead of me? He laughs, a short, sharp, hysterical sound. This is crazy. I sound crazy, but I'm not. I saw him. He looks away from the camera, into the dense woods surrounding him. His eyes dart back and forth. The optimist is completely gone, replaced by a raw, primal terror. I'm getting off the main trail, he says, his gaze snapping back to the lens, his eyes wide with a desperate, half-formed plan. There's an old service path marked on the map a few miles from here. It's overgrown, barely used. It cuts north and rejoins the trail about 20 miles up. He won't expect that. I can lose him. I have to. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't sign off. He just reaches out and the screen cuts to black. The footage that follows confirms his plan. The wide, well-trodden Appalachian Trail is gone, replaced by a choked, barely there path that looks more like a deer trail than a human passage. Alex is forcing his way through thick undergrowth, branches clawing at his face and pack. The going is slow, tortuous. The camera is on a chest mount now, giving us his point of view. The world becomes a claustrophobic tunnel of green and brown. The sounds are of snapping twigs under his feet and his own grunts of exertion. It feels more dangerous here, more isolated. If something were to happen, no one would ever find him on this forgotten path. He pushes on for what seems like hours. The sun begins to dip lower, casting long, distorted shadows through the dense canopy. He's moving slower now, exhaustion clearly setting in. He stops to rest, leaning heavily against a massive, moss-covered boulder, the camera pointed forward into the gloomy woods. His breathing is a constant, harsh rhythm in the microphone, and that's when the sound begins. It's faint at first, barely audible over his own panting. It's a whistle, not a bird call. It's artificial, human, a simple, three-note melody, almost like a nursery rhyme. Up, down, a little trill, then a pause. It repeats, over and over. It's coming from somewhere up ahead, deep in the tangled woods he's walking into. On the tape, you can see Alex's entire body go rigid. He slowly, silently, crouches down behind the boulder, his movements agonizingly slow. He's trying to make himself smaller, to disappear. The camera is now peeking just over the top of the rock. It holds that shot for a long, agonizing minute. The woods are still. The whistling continues its placid, repetitive tune. It's such an innocent sound, yet in this context, it's the most terrifying thing in the world. It's a signal. It's a taunt. It says, I know you're here. I'm waiting for you. Then, as suddenly as it began, the whistling stops. The silence that rushes in is somehow worse. It's thick, heavy, and full of menace. Alex stays frozen behind the rock. 1 minute passes. 2. The only sound is the low, ragged whisper of Alex's own breathing, so quiet he must be holding his breath. He's waiting. We're waiting. His terror is so palpable it feels like you could reach through the screen and touch it. And then it comes again. The same simple, three-note melody. Clear as a bell. It's not from the front anymore. It's from behind him, on the path he just came down. And it's closer. Much, much closer. The camera whips around in a motion so violent the image smears into a blur of motion. It steadies on the empty, darkening path behind him. There is nothing there, just the silent, watching trees. The whistling has stopped again. He's trapped between 2 points of an unseen, tightening net. The chapter of the footage ends there, in that deafening, absolute silence. The silence that follows the final whistle on the recording is one of the most profound I've ever heard. It's not an absence of sound. It's a presence. It's the sound of a world holding its breath. For the next 7 minutes of footage, Alex doesn't move. The camera remains pointed at the empty, darkening path behind him, his body a dark lump at the bottom of the frame, crouched behind the boulder. The only audio is the wind, and a faint, high-pitched ringing in the microphone that I can only assume is the sound of pure, undiluted terror building inside his own ears. He's pinned down, caught. He knows, and we know, that this is no longer a pursuit. It's a game, and his opponent has just shown him that the board is much, much larger than he thought. The next file is labeled, night_3. The timestamp shows it was recorded hours later. The screen is pitch black. The audio is all there is. It's the sound of shallow, controlled breathing, Alex's breathing, and the rustle of his sleeping bag against the floor of his tent. He must have stayed hidden until complete darkness fell, then scrambled back to his tent somehow, banking on the idea that he wouldn't attack him in his one small bastion of civilization. He stayed awake the entire night. I know this because the recording is over 6 hours long, and not once does his breathing pattern change to the deep, slow rhythm of sleep. It's the sound of a man lying perfectly still, listening for a footstep, for a whisper, for the three-note whistle to start up again just outside the thin nylon wall. It never comes. The silence is the torture. The next morning's footage, day_4_move_again, shows the toll that night took. Alex looks like he's aged 5 years. His movements are slow, heavy, as if his limbs are made of lead. He doesn't bother with a video diary entry. There's nothing left to say. The performance is over. He packs up his camp with a kind of numb efficiency, his eyes constantly scanning the trees around his small campsite. He has abandoned the overgrown service path, a failed gambit, and has now pushed into a part of the forest with no path at all. He's just moving north, bushwhacking his way through the wilderness, relying on his compass. His strategy, as much as I can piece it together, had changed. He seemed to realize that hiding in the dense woods had only made him more vulnerable, trapping him in a maze where his pursuer held all the advantages. So, that afternoon, he makes for a different kind of terrain. He finds a wide, barren area, a patch of rocky ground sloping gently upwards, dotted with only a few stunted trees. It's exposed, uncomfortable, but you can see for 100 yards in every direction. There are no deep shadows for a thin man to dissolve into, no thickets to conceal a whistle. Here, he hopes, he can finally see his enemy coming. He sets up his tent in the very center of this clearing. It's a desperate act. He's turning his shelter into a beacon. He's saying, "Here I am. Come and get me, but this time, I'll see you." He props the camera on its mini tripod and points it at the tent, then walks away from it, downhill towards a line of trees where he must have heard water. A file named day_4_water shows his point of view. He's carrying a filter and his water bottles. The trip to the small, trickling creek and back takes him less than 10 minutes. The footage is hurried. He fills his bottles, his head on a swivel, constantly looking back up the slope towards his lonely tent. He isn't calm. He's a man on a mission, trying to minimize his time away from his gear, away from his safe zone. He scrambles back up the rocky slope, his breathing ragged in the chest mount microphone. Back at the camp, he immediately begins a ritual of checking his things. You can see it in the footage from the tripod camera, which has been recording this whole time. He walks a slow circle around the tent. He checks the guy lines. He unzips the flap and looks inside. From the camera's vantage point, we see him give a small, almost imperceptible nod. A breath of relief. Nothing seems to have been touched. The tent is exactly as he left it. For a moment, it seems his strategy worked. The open space provided security. He was just being paranoid. He sits down on a flat rock near the tent, his back to the camera, and pulls out his journal and a pen. He's so tired. You can see it in the slump of his shoulders. He opens the journal. For a few seconds, he just sits there, an entry from a previous day open on his lap. Then, he decides to write. He flips a page, then another. He stops. His whole body stiffens. The camera is too far away to see the details, but his posture changes completely. That momentary relief evaporates, replaced by a cold, rigid fear. He slowly, deliberately, turns the book around so the open pages face the camera he had left on the tripod. He's not doing it for a film project anymore. He's doing it for witness. For me, for anyone who might find this. He then gets up, walks to the camera, and picks it up. The view becomes a shaky close-up of the journal in his trembling hands. He flips back to the entry he wrote 2 days ago, the one about the old man at the shelter, the one where he first documented his unease, where he first described the man's empty eyes. The page is gone. It hasn't been ripped out violently. The edge is clean, almost surgical. It's been cut out with a knife or a razor blade. Someone, in the 10 minutes he was gone to get water, had walked up to his tent in this wide open space, silently opened his pack, taken out his journal, sliced out a single, specific page, and then put everything back exactly as it was. They had been there. They had touched his most private thoughts. This wasn't a random madman anymore. This was calculated. This was a message. It said, "I know what you're thinking. I can get to you anytime I want. Your walls mean nothing." The video ends with a close-up of Alex's hand closing the journal. The sound is a soft, final thud. There is no footage from the rest of that day. None. I can only imagine the state of his mind. He was no longer just being followed. He was being toyed with, psychologically dismantled piece by piece. The physical threat was constant, but this was worse. This was an invasion of his mind. They knew what he was writing, what he was feeling. That night, he abandoned the tent. He must have realized it wasn't a fortress, but a target. In the first clip from the next morning, day_5_shelter, the camera's night vision is on. The timestamp reads 5:48 a.m. The image is grainy and monochrome gray. Alex is crammed into a small, natural rock overhang, a sort of shallow cave he must have found late the previous day. He's wrapped in his sleeping bag for warmth, but it's clear he hasn't slept. His pack is next to him. His camera is propped on his pack, the lens pointing back at him. It's his silent companion, his black box. As the sun rises, casting a weak, gray light into the overhang, he stirs. He looks drained, hollowed out. He fumbles with his gear, his movements clumsy with exhaustion and fear. He makes a decision. He is going to check his camera, just in case. Just to be sure. He picks it up, and the view spins around to show the bleak, gray morning outside his little rock cave. He navigates through the camera's menu. We see the file list. Day_4_move_again. Day_4_water. Day_4_journal. And then we see it. I saw it at the same moment. He must have a new file. It's titled simply 3_17_am. A cold dread washes over me every time I watch this part. I know what's coming. Alex's hand, holding the camera, is shaking so badly the screen is a blur. He moves his thumb over the play button. He hesitates. He has to know. He has to see. He presses play. The clip is 10 seconds long. The image that fills the screen is a perfectly framed, perfectly steady close-up of his own face. It's shot in the camera's infrared night vision mode, rendering his features in shades of ghostly gray and white. His eyes are closed, his mouth slightly parted. He is fast asleep. The shot is so close you can see the faint flutter of his eyelids in a dream. But that's not the chilling part. The chilling part is where the camera is. It's not on his backpack inside the rock shelter with him. The angle is wrong. It's lower. It's outside, on the ground, looking into the shallow cave. Someone had taken his camera while he slept, placed it on the ground a few feet from his head, and filmed him. The image is dead still. But the audio is alive. First, you hear the hushed sound of the wind outside the shelter. Then, the soft, rhythmic sound of Alex's own breathing as he sleeps. And then, layered over it, is another sound. A sound so close to the camera's microphone it's wet and intimate. It's the sound of someone else breathing. It's not the steady rhythm of a sleeping person. It's a slow, rasping, guttural wheeze. A thick, heavy sound, like air being forced through damaged lungs. It's the sound of someone crouched in the dark, just out of frame, holding the camera, watching him sleep. Inhale, a long, rattling pause. Exhale, a wet, co-key whistle. It goes on for the full 10 seconds of the video. Then, the clip ends. Abruptly, the screen goes black. The main footage returns to Alex, standing in the gray morning light, holding the camera. He is utterly frozen. He just stares at the blank screen, at the reflection of his own horrified face. He has just watched a recording of his own deepest vulnerability, filmed by the monster that haunts his steps. The game is over. He is no longer being followed or taunted. He is being kept, and he has just been shown, with irrefutable, nightmarish clarity, that even in sleep, he is never, ever alone. The next file on the camera starts just seconds after the last one ends. The file name is a jumble of letters and numbers, not a deliberate name like Alex's others. It's the kind of default name a camera assigns when you just hit record in a blind panic. And that's exactly what this was. The view is a dizzying, chaotic blur of gray and green. Alex is running. He must have just dropped the camera back into its chest harness and started sprinting without a single thought. You don't see anything clearly. You just get the feeling of uncontrolled motion, a sickening lurch as he stumbles, the thud of his own feet on the forest floor, the whip and tear of low branches catching on his clothes. But the audio tells the whole story. It's a storm of ragged, desperate gasps. He's not just breathing hard. He's sobbing for air, a high-pitched, keening sound caught in his throat with every inhalation. It's the sound of an animal running for its life. A sound of pure, system overload terror. He doesn't know where he's going. I don't think he even cared. He was just moving away from that rock shelter, away from the 10-second video and the intimate, wheezing breath of the thing that had been inches from his sleeping face. North, south, it didn't matter. There was only here and away from here. For maybe 15 minutes, this is all the footage is, a nauseating, frantic scramble through the woods as a gray, unforgiving sky looms overhead through the canopy. Then, the first drops of rain begin to hit the lens. They look like little explosions of light on the screen. At first, it's just a few. Then a dozen. Within a minute, the sky rips open. The sound changes completely. His panicked breathing is almost drowned out by the roar of the downpour, a deafening hiss that saturates the microphone. The world through the camera lens dissolves into a smeared, watery abstract painting. This isn't just rain, it's a deluge, the kind of sudden, violent Appalachian storm that can cause flash floods and hypothermia in minutes. For a normal hiker, this would be a crisis. For Alex, it was an apocalypse. He's shouting now, though the words are torn away by the wind and rain. Little desperate fragments. No, oh God, no, please. It's not a prayer, it's just a raw vocalization of his despair. He's slipping and sliding in the mud, and you can hear the heavy thud as he falls, twice. Both times, he's back up in seconds, grunting with effort, driven by a fear that was clearly greater than his exhaustion or the storm itself. Then, through the curtain of rain, a shape emerges. A dark, geometric block against the fluid chaos of the forest. A cabin. It's small and decrepit, barely more than a shed, the kind of forgotten hunting shack you might find deep in these woods. For Alex, it must have looked like a cathedral. He changes direction, making a clumsy, direct line for it. The camera bobs wildly as he crashes through the undergrowth, and then there's the sound of his hand fumbling with a door. A creak of rusty hinges, and then the world goes black as he stumbles inside. The roar of the rain is instantly muffled, replaced by the sound of it drumming relentlessly on a tin roof. The only audio for a full minute is that drumming and Alex's breathing. It's a terrible sound. He's on his hands and knees, I think, just trying to pull air back into his lungs. Each breath is a shuddering, wet gasp that sounds like it's tearing him apart from the inside. A new file starts. This one is titled, Storm_Alone. He must have had the presence of mind to stop the old recording and start a new one. The camera is no longer on his chest. He's placed it on a flat surface, a large, mossy rock that seems to be part of the cabin's foundation, jutting up through the dirt floor. The lens is pointed at the only door. The shot is stable, a fixed frame of grim, gray light filtering through the open doorway, showing the rain hammering the ground outside. The cabin is a wreck. The camera's low light sensitivity shows dark, rotting planks for walls, wide gaps where you can see the forest through. There's no furniture, just dirt, fallen leaves, and the smell of rot and damp earth that you can almost feel through the screen. Alex stumbles into the frame, a silhouette against the doorway. He's soaked, shivering, his face a pale mask in the gloom. He doesn't close the door. I think he's too scared to. Too scared to be trapped. Too scared of what was out there, but also too scared to be cornered in here. He just stands there, watching the rain, his arms wrapped around himself. He looks like a ghost haunting the scene of his own demise. He's trying to get a hold of himself. You can see it. He takes a shaky breath, then another. He scrubs a hand over his face. He's trying to think, trying to make a plan. For about 5 minutes, nothing happens. It's just the sound of the rain and Alex standing there, a statue of fear. I watch this part and I just think, what was going through his head? Was he thinking about his project? About his family? Or was his mind just white noise? Then it happens. A flash of lightning illuminates the entire forest, bleaching the world white for a single, stark second. And in that second, framed perfectly in the center of the doorway, is the man. The thin man. He's just standing there, maybe 20 feet away, utterly still. The rain plasters his thin, graying hair to his skull and slicks down his ragged clothes. His face, for that one split second, is turned directly towards the cabin. Towards Alex. And his eyes are just as Alex described them in his journal. Blank. Empty. Like two dark holes punched in a sheet of paper. He isn't menacing. He isn't angry. He's just there, an inevitability, a fact of the landscape, as certain as the trees and the rain. The thunder that follows is a physical blow, a deafening crack that shakes the little cabin. But it's drowned out by Alex's scream. It's not a word, it's a raw, animal sound of pure terror. The sight of the man, the very thing he'd been running from, standing there so calmly in the heart of the storm, just waiting for him, it broke him. The spell of paralysis shatters. Alex launches himself at the door, a heavy, wooden plank that was barely hanging on its leather hinges. He slams it shut. The cabin is plunged into near total darkness, the only light now coming from the gaps in the walls. The camera, still recording from its perch on the rock, captures it all. He fumbles in the dark, his breath coming in choked sobs. He finds his trekking pole and tries to jam it against the door. He's screaming, just screaming nonsense, "Get away! Leave me alone! Get away from me!" He grabs his heavy pack and shoves it against the bottom of the door. He's trying to barricade himself in, using the last of his strength to create a flimsy barrier against the patient horror outside. For a moment, there is silence. Just the rain and Alex's ragged breathing. Maybe it worked. Maybe the man would just go away. Bump. A soft, almost gentle push against the door. The whole frame shudders. Alex freezes. "Go away," he whispers. Bump. Bump. Harder this time. The old wood groans in protest. Alex shrinks back from the door, scrambling away until his back hits the far wall of the cabin, bringing him closer to the camera. "Leave me alone," he shrieks, his voice cracking with hysteria. And then the sound from outside changes. It's no longer a bump. It's a slam, a series of rhythmic, furious blows that make the entire cabin tremble. It's a mindless, brutal assault. But it's the sound that comes with it. Through the splintering wood and the roar of the rain, a new sound emerges. It's a growl. It's not the growl of a bear or a dog. It's a low, wet, guttural sound from a human throat, but it's utterly devoid of humanity. It's a thick, rattling, hateful noise, the sound of lungs filled with gravel and malice, rising in pitch with every blow to the door. It's the sound from the video, that horrible wheezing breath, now amplified into a full-throated snarl of rage. Crack. A plank near the top of the door splinters. A sliver of gray light cuts through the darkness. Alex is just making noise now, a continuous, high-pitched wail of terror. He knows it's over. The barrier is failing. He's trapped. Crack. Bam. The sound of the trekking pole snapping in two. The door lurches inwards, held only by the dead weight of his pack. The growling outside is constant now, a rabid, slobbering sound. Crash. The door explodes inwards, torn from its hinges. The heavy pack is thrown aside as if it were a toy. A dark figure, a mass of wet cloth and frantic motion, lunges into the blackness of the cabin. The camera's view is suddenly and violently disrupted. It's knocked from the rock, sent tumbling through the air. The image becomes a meaningless spiral of dark shapes and motion blur. It hits the dirt floor with a heavy thud, the lens now pointing at a dark corner of the cabin, showing nothing but rotting wood and black earth. But the audio continues. It records everything. There's the sound of a desperate, violent struggle. The scuffling of boots on the dirt floor, the heavy grunts of two bodies colliding, the sickening, wet tear of fabric. Over it all is that inhuman, rasping growl, now close, so close to the microphone. And then, Alex's voice, one last time. It's not a word, it's a scream, a short, sharp, horribly final scream of agony that is choked off mid-breath. It's followed by a wet, heavy thud. And then, silence. Not total silence. The growling has stopped. The struggle has stopped. But the storm rages on. The sound of the rain, drumming on the tin roof and pouring through the open doorway, is all that's left. A steady, indifferent, cleansing sound. It just keeps falling, and falling. That's the last thing on the tape. The sound of rain. The sound of nothing. For a long, long time, I thought that was the end of Alex's story. Just a final, brutal stop in a forgotten corner of the woods. A tragic, random act of violence. But the story didn't end in that cabin. In a way, the most terrifying part started long after the audio cut out. The thing is, the camera and the journal weren't found in the cabin. They weren't found anywhere near it. They turned up almost 3 weeks later, over 50 miles north of where we now estimate Alex's final stand took place. 50 miles. Let that sink in. A group of through hikers, a family from Ohio, I think, found them sitting on a bench at the Quarry Gap shelter. Just sitting there. The camera case was zipped up. The leather-bound journal was placed right beside it. Not thrown in the dirt. Not damaged. They were placed there deliberately, almost thoughtfully, like someone leaving a book for the next person to read. I spoke to the park ranger who first took custody of the items. He was an older guy, name of Bill, had that weary look of someone who's seen too much weirdness in the woods to be surprised by anything anymore. But even he said this was different. We get lost hikers all the time, he told me, his voice gravelly over the phone. We get people who have accidents, people who just walk off and want to disappear. But this was something else. 50 miles is a hard week's hike for a fit person. The kid on that tape, Alex, he wasn't in any shape to walk 50 feet, let alone 50 miles. And for his gear to be left so politely? It makes no sense. The people who do the kind of thing we heard on that tape, they don't clean up after themselves. They don't return property. Of course, once they saw the first few videos, a full-scale search and rescue was launched. It was a massive operation. State police, canine units, dozens of volunteers combing the forest grid by grid. They brought in helicopters with thermal imaging, sweeping the area around the cabin, which they eventually located based on Alex's frantic footage and some old Park Service maps. They found the cabin exactly as the video showed. The door smashed in, his broken trekking pole, his heavy pack thrown in the corner. They found scuff marks in the dirt floor. They even found a few dark, reddish-brown stains on the floorboards that lab tests later confirmed were human blood. Alex's blood type, but they didn't find Alex. Not a trace, no body, no drag marks leading away from the cabin. The dogs lost the scent right at the doorway, which the handlers said was bizarre. It was as if he had been lifted straight up into the air and flown away. After 10 days, with a heavy snowstorm moving in, the official search was called off. Alex's smiling, optimistic face from his early videos was now on news reports across the state, another picture on the sad, ever-growing collage of people consumed by the Appalachian Trail. Officially, he was listed as missing, presumed victim of foul play. And officially, he was a ghost story, a cautionary tale for hikers to tell around a campfire. For months, that's where it stayed. A brutal, unsolved mystery. The footage was analyzed by law enforcement, but the final, chaotic moments were deemed too blurry, too dark to identify an assailant. The case went cold, but the story gnawed at me. I'm a freelance audio engineer. Sometimes I do post-production for indie films. Sometimes I help with true crime podcasts. A friend in the state forensics lab, knowing my line of work, slipped me a copy of the raw audio files. He said, maybe you can hear something we missed. Just be careful. This stuff gets in your head. He was right. I spent weeks with it. I listened to Alex's final, choked off scream so many times I started hearing it in my sleep. The primary sound in that final section, aside from the storm, was the attacker. That horrible, wet, rasping growl. It was the sound that haunted everyone who heard it. It was so completely inhuman, a sound of pure, slobbering rage. The investigators had logged it as the vocalizations of a single, deranged individual. The thin man from the doorway. It was the only theory that fit. But there was something else. It was buried deep in the mix, almost completely masked by the roar of the rain on the tin roof and the attacker's own guttural snarling. It was a ghost in the machine, a whisper of a sound right after Alex's scream was cut short. It happened in the brief moment of silence after the final, heavy thud, the sound of Alex hitting the floor, and before the growling fully subsided. It was less than 2 seconds of audio. I spent probably 40 hours on those 2 seconds. I used every filtering trick I knew. I ran noise reduction algorithms to pull out the constant hiss of the rain. I used an EQ to isolate the specific frequency ranges of human speech, cutting out the low-end rumble of the storm and the high-end crackle of distortion. I painstakingly removed the artifacts of the growl, peeling back the layers of sound one by one like an archaeologist dusting off a fossil. I was in my studio, late one night. It was probably 3 in the morning. I had the headphones on, the volume cranked way up. I had finally isolated it. It was faint, tinny, and distorted by the cheap camera mic, but it was there. And it wasn't the growler. It was a completely different voice. It was calm, annoyingly, terrifyingly calm. It was a whisper, but a clear one. A man's voice, flat and emotionless, as if he were giving a work instruction to a colleague. I played the filtered clip. First, you hear the tail end of the wet thud as Alex's body hits the ground. Then, the fading, rasping breath of the attacker. And then, clear as a bell in the sudden quiet, the second voice whispers. Not him. Let it go. He has the camera. I ripped the headphones off my head. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard it felt like it was going to break them. I sat there in the silence of my studio, the hum of my equipment the only sound, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. It took me a full minute to even process what I had just heard. Not him. There were 2 of them. At least 2. One was the animal, the thing that smashed down the door and made those god-awful sounds. The other was the manager, the observer, the one who was thinking clearly. Let it go. They stopped. The attack, as brutal as it was cut short. They didn't kill Alex. They overpowered him, they beat him, and then they stopped. On command. They weren't frenzied, mindless murderers. This was controlled. This was a process. He has the camera. That was the key. That was the whole damn thing. That cheap, consumer-grade camcorder saved Alex's life. Not because he filmed his attacker and they got scared. No, it was because the camera itself disqualified him. He wasn't their target. Their target, whoever that is, doesn't carry a camera. Their target wouldn't be making a documentary about finding peace and solitude. Alex was a tourist, an outsider. He just stumbled into their hunting ground by mistake. Everything clicked into place in the worst possible way. The perfectly placed camera and journal, 50 miles north. It wasn't left by a ghost. It was returned. A professional courtesy, almost. This isn't yours, we're just putting it back where someone will find it. Nothing to see here. They weren't trying to hide the evidence, they were just tidying up. Disposing of something that wasn't part of their objective. Alex didn't survive because he was lucky. He survived because he failed the audition. He was the wrong person. It reframed the entire event from a random, terrifying assault into something colder. More calculating, more monstrous. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a business transaction. And Alex was simply the wrong product. He was caught and released. What happened to him after they left him broken and bloody in that cabin, 50 miles from help? We'll never know. Did he succumb to his injuries? Did he wander deliriously into the freezing rain and die of exposure? Or did something else find him? Either way, they were done with him. The police were skeptical at first, but they couldn't deny the audio evidence once I sent it to them. The file was reopened quietly. It's not public knowledge. The official story is still a lone, deranged attacker. They don't want to cause a panic on the trail, but they know there's a team out there. A group that hunts people in the deep woods with a specific, unknown set of criteria. And that's the question that keeps me awake at night. The question that's so much worse than a simple ghost story. The Thin Man, the Growler, they weren't just monsters. They were gatekeepers. They were predators with a shopping list. So, who are they looking for?